Mm-hmm.
regardless of like how I feel. Like I'm trying to like, okay, look, if I feel a way and I can't necessarily back it up with stuff, like I should probably just fucking listen to people. Like listen to people, see how they feel about it. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I also generally tend to like think bring on people that I respect their opinion too, so that kind of helps as well. But the
Yeah.
stream should be
And
going.
yet here I am.
I know, right?
And Nate was like,
You
and I'm
You
still
intend to,
here.
man.
you
You
dirty
didn't say it always worked that way.
you dirty pleb. Uh, but
I love it, man. I love a good like DBZ deck building or like meta debate, but if the person that you're debating with can't give you any substance to what like their point and they still won't, I don't want to say submit, but like comply, I guess is a better way to say it. It's like that's like, all right, bud,
Hey
you
man,
got it.
you just described like 90% of all arguments that happen about anything.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
Shut up.
is it?
It'd be like that. It'd be like that, man.
People love to have an opinion based on feeling,
Hmm.
and then when you like start poking holes in it, usually they just are like, "Shut up."
Oh, here we
This is
go.
gonna sound sexist, but that's a woman thing, kinda. Like women, kind of like are driven by like their emotions. So when you get into a conversation with like a dude who's like maneuvering that way, it kind of like takes you a minute to realize, like, oh, I recognize this type of exchange. I just didn't expect it to be here. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, in my experience with talking to people, there's a degree of that. I think guys' emotions are a bit different though. Like when they are
Mhm.
emotional, they're a lot more. I think they're a lot more angry in a very like more confrontational way, like
Mm,
upfront and trying to
combative.
like men are trying to intimidate you when they're emotional. Like they try to intimidate you and get you to back down or
Hmm.
comply. You know, they do it very differently. Women, I feel like generally if they're using emotion on me and they're trying to beat me in an argument, they're trying to guilt me. That's my. I should probably stop
Mm,
throwing around my hot takes. So now that I'm
mm.
streaming.
Nah, you cooking?
Oh God,
You cooking?
canceled. I'm just goofing. But anyway, okay. So the stream is live. Anyway, we did not come here to talk about that stuff. My theories on social relations. But everyone who's checking in here, viewing, I am with Brandon Biggers, Wayne Beatus, and Nate Brown. We are here to talk about the post-CRD kind of climate that we have in the fancy metagaming, specifically competitive. I introduced you guys. Normally, I let you all introduce yourself, but if you guys did watch the last stream here, of course, Wayne was here for the last one. A lot of very interesting kind of takes about like kind of the state of the balance. A couple of interesting decks, for example, that he mentioned that were really powerful that I think we'll get to talking about today. Again, traveled to multiple OP events. Brandon was just at the last couple of them that we had. You went to South Kai. What did you play at South Kai?
I did not go to South Kai.
Oh, sorry.
I was at Supreme Kai and East Kai.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so played Knowledge Dende and then Unity Ginyu. So
Yeah, and there's another deck we can talk about. And Nate, I know you were playing at your Gastonia event. I know you didn't really get to travel much, but you were playing. You did Energito, correct?
Yeah, I played Energito.
Yeah. So again, like Brandon, you won an event. Wayne, you won an event. No, Brandon, you didn't win an event.
oh, second. I lost to Wayne.
You took second,
Actually.
and then how did
Yeah.
you do it at East Kai again? You top four. You took fourth with
Top 8.
Didn't you make top four? Am I misremembering this? Like, didn't you take Unity Guinea to top four?
I took top 8.
Okay.
Had to play Kevin back to back, and he played significantly better the second time. So
That's very
It's like a
fair.
thing with you.
Kevin is definitely one of those people that once he definitely needs that first game warm up. Like he definitely
Well,
can
and
lock in pretty well when you play him. Like after a couple.
I kind of boogeymaned him a little bit. I don't know. Wayne remembers after Supreme Kai, like he was very salty because he could not beat Unity Ginyu, and then
Mhm.
he threw in the super secret driving drill tech for East Kai because he figured I was going to run Ginyu correctly, and so pulled out this set 2 drill that everybody forgot existed, and just kind of shut down my whole deck. So that was fun for me.
No, understandable. Well, anyway, you guys I know, like Brandon has played multiple decks in Top Cut. I know Nate, you generally more of an aggro player. Kind of more. You do mix a mid range and aggro, right? Or just aggro in
Yeah,
general?
yeah. I prefer aggro, but yeah. I mean, I play a lot of different stuff.
Mm. So again, kind of like a nicely kind of rounded couple of decks that y'all have been playing this set. I kind of feel like I'm doing a bunch of messing around here, but let's just get right into it. So the CRD drops. I was incredibly impressed by how much it hit. I was not expecting such a wide hit of a CRD.
Yeah, it was kind of like all the stuff that people have wanted for a while just kind of happened. Was kind of blown away by it.
Is anybody expecting it to actually happen?
No, not at
No,
all.
I don't think so.
Right. I remember I was about to, it was late and I was about to go to sleep and I saw it on Retro. I was like, oh, we're for real? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, they're probably just gonna say something about knowledge. But
Mm-hmm.
man, I will say this about the CRD. I think that the way they chose to nerf Vegeta was done in a really, really creative way. You know, I feel like if you want to play that deck now, you have to play that weak Premier level one. And I don't know. I don't know if it makes obviously makes it worse. How much worse is yet to be seen, and I don't think we're ever going to see it because I don't think anyone is that brave. So
Yeah, I mean, well, I was talking to Mark Bolger actually, and he's like, "Why would you play anything else other than tag Vegeta in TOP? Because the single elimination event, it's extremely consistent right from the get go, and you're throwing heat immediately, and yeah, unless your opponent sees an answer, you're probably gonna roll." Um, I don't know uh, how much juice has been kind of taken away from. I mean, you're losing in action essentially, right? And your anger isn't guaranteed. Those are the two things that happen. But I mean, AK still hits for 6 and 2 and gains you 2 anger on level 1. So I mean, I think it's still obviously good. I don't know that it is. I think you're right. I don't think anybody's going to run it, and I think maybe that was the intention, was to kind of push people off of it.
well, real quick, let me ask you like this, Brandon. If before the CRD, the deck's power level was at like a 9.
Mm-hmm.
With this after the CRD, how far do you think it falls down?
Not far. I think it's maybe an 8,
Hmm.
honestly.
Really,
Yeah.
Hmm.
Frank?
And well, I mean, because I
Well,
think I think the extra card draw is just extremely powerful. The mod is extremely powerful, and so I mean, you're still getting an extra card over your opponent in most cases every combat, and you're still getting +2/+2 for free every combat. And
mhm.
I mean, you're probably still gonna level pretty well unless they have time or just draw a handful of blocks, because 1 or 2 attacks are probably going to hit every combat. So I don't know. I need to try it. I haven't tried it,
Mhm.
but in my mind, it doesn't really take too much off the top of it. But I do think that it slows it down, and I think it gives a window for other decks to respond, which I think is why it's a good call.
Yeah, I think it's much more vulnerable um, in the beginning of the game if you can remove Gogeta quickly because then you're stuck with Premier Vegeta level 1, which basically isn't doing anything. Crown Prince is still a decent level even if you don't have Gogeta. Uh, but now like if you don't see Tandem and they're able to get rid of Gogeta until you can get him back, you're pretty much just playing like one of the worst decks you could ever be playing.
That was still true even
Mhm.
with Crown Prince, though.
Right.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
Crown Prince is significantly better. I mean, at least
Mhm.
you have a crit, like an onboard
true.
crit and an onboard attack.
Yeah. So I think everything Brandon said is correct to a degree. Like the power of the ally is immense. The ally does everything. It does everything. But we have to remember that you are trading immediate gain anger that you were always going to get for conditional anger,
And
and you
attack.
lost an action. So
Mhm.
you're pushing, take forgive me if I'm wrong. Tag Vegeta is 2+2+2. It's been so long since I played against it. I feel like because nobody I've played against has been playing it, but you've lost out on a 6 and 2 damage attack that is anger, hate, board removal potential. It's something that people have to block. Wall Breaker instantly folds your deck over. Like, it already was really bad if you were on 2 or 3 and you took a Wall Breaker, but now that card literally instantly folds you over right out of the gate. On top of it, to jump into another deck that just got hit, we lose Knowledge. Feast Upon, sure, decks play Feast Upon, but Knowledge obviously was like the only MPPV deck that people were really playing in numbers, it seemed like. Like, there was Ascension decks and other things. Those decks don't really have as much space to run Feast Upon, especially Ascension decks. Mm-hmm. Like, that card is a really like risky play to actually run in Ascension decks. You don't even need it, really, but... So now, like, you see that, like, Wall Breaker, at least in a lot of players' perception, might actually creep up and play, and it actually becomes a better counter card to everything that people are already playing, and if people try to go back to these old decks in any form. So I think if he was a 9, he's dropped down to a 6. Would I want to pick him over an MP like regular Vegeta? I think regular Vegeta is better than him. I think Maj Vegeta is better than him. I think a lot of MPs have a better combat 1 than him, and he's incredibly luck reliant, kind of like what Rampaging is to me. Like, Rampaging is really, really great and all if you can cheese off early game, but we see a lot of these Rampaging decks start to falter when they get up to like level 3 on the second or third combat if their opponent's able to stabilize, right? So, like, in general, yeah, I think he's took an immense hit, and I think the cards that are going to move into the vacuum post-CRD are going to also just kind of help gutter him a bit more. And like you said, I don't think anybody's really brave enough to play him. Now, could you do good with him? Absolutely. Take Vegeta Ally is like absolutely crazy strong. It's still worth playing. I think the deck is still worth a consideration, but me personally, I think there are better options than it now. And there are going to be decks that, like, you are so hosed if you lose that Ally more and more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't know that there is... I mean, I think you kind of have to view Gogeta as like your mastery. And, you kind of ask yourself, is there a mastery that is as good as +2/+2, draw the bottom card when entering? And every attack in your deck raises your anger 1.
No.
and there's not. There's really not. And, obviously the constraint is you have to basically have a blank level 1 now. But... I don't know. I still think there's tremendous early game advantage there. And like Ruthless, for instance. Ruthless, I mean, you need a card in pile to really push the kind of damage that Tag Vegeta pushes turn 1, or turn 2, I guess, at this point. I don't know. Like, I struggle to think of a deck that can jump down your throat as quickly. I think that it's pretty obvious that just based on South Kai that people, and that's kind of a Vegeta heavy event anyway, but it seems like people in response to the CRD agreed with you and kind of went with, let's go back to Hero Vegeta because he's just all around powerful. He fits into so many places and he pushes a lot of advantage on his own. So I don't know. I think that we are really in a place where we're going to have to see how Tag Vegeta settles before we can make a determination about what he does, because nobody's run him yet. So
I think that's very fair.
I think I'll rescind and say 7 out of 10. By the way, I think 6 is a little too much, but like I think he definitely drops. I still agree with that. He drops enough that he's not like you were saying. Mark said, why would you not run that deck? The thing is, it is consistent, incredibly consistent, and it forces your opponent to draw the out to you. Like there aren't, there are multiple decks that do that, but like that deck was a very obvious contender of a deck that was like, you have to draw the out to me. So,
Before I give my closing thoughts on Gooey, Nate, what were your numbers on the deck pre and post CRD? Never said.
I would agree with that. Before it was a 9. Man, I'd say I'd say probably like, I think it's like a 7.5.
Okay.
I still think it's really, really strong. It still has potential to just like go nuts and kill you like turn 1. But I do think it is a little bit weaker and a little bit more vulnerable than it was. I'll say the closing thing is I'd be interested to see if anybody's willing to explore it in any other mastery, any other style.
You know, you're right. That's a very good point. Because no. Like, listen, Frank. Because there's a bunch of Saiyan cards that no one plays that goes and gets a Saiyan ally.
How about
I think there's
Rampaging?
two of them. I think there's two of them.
Rampaging Crown Prince with
And we're
Gugita
not.
ally?
Yeah, we're not even talking immediate. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you can. The thing is, he's so powerful. One turn can sometimes be enough. Like, if you pull him out at the right time, it could just end the game. You know, like, yeah, you don't have the constant like power that you would have by having him with tag, where you start the game with him, and you know, you have the recursion and everything. But you know, like I said, one turn can be enough. So you know, I think there is a potential for a Saiyan build. I'm not saying it's going to be as good, or that it may not even be good. I'm just curious if anybody's willing to experiment with it and see if they can make something work.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
I
like
think-
now that you say that, it's kind of funny because testing for Iskai, Kevin was testing tag hero Jita, tag free Jita, and one of the reasons he was doing that was to counter Gujita. And so he would, no matter whether he won the roll or not, he would let me go first, and he would search Roshi ally. And so then you know you can't search for Gu, and so you're just kind of like, okay, well I'm stuck with you know Vegeta, and you just kind of play the game. And we played it 3 times, and I won 2 out of 3 because I just drew the ally and played him. And then that turn, it was like, okay, well I'm going to deal 40 life cards. So I think you got a point there, Nate.
The rampaging sounds
well,
interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say this. Rampaging is an interesting concept, though. I'd have to think about that one. Now that you said that, so I shouldn't have shaken my.
I think it goes lower than you even started, Frank. I think it goes down to like a 5. I think that the superpower that deck had was its consistency and its speed, right? And sure, if you take away Crown Prince, I think people didn't realize how important it was to that strategy. Crown Prince was not only an attack that you get that, I mean, if it hits, it's pretty much stage locking, especially if they win the roll. But it's also providing you with a potential crit and probably at least 2 anger, right? So now that you've taken that away and putting you back in the premier box, if you start the game and you draw, and even if you get your goo going, you got 4 cards, right? If your opponent draws 1 block, you still have to fight through the stages. That's still a very real thing, you know? And if you can't fight through those stages, you're not going to do any significant damage. Sure, you get the bonus, you get the life cards from goo, but that's not going to push the needle. And by the time you get things going, it's a couple turns later. Now they've had chances to build a board and be prepared for what you're about to do, and you're not even guaranteed to get off the level 1, really. So it's like it's a much more level playing field where I feel like the greatest advantage was it was able to get off the line faster than anybody and do significant damage. And just by changing the MP, that level 1 MP, just takes that entire ability for that deck to do that away, you know? So I think if it was a 9, losing that is huge, and I think it falls to about a 5.
So, a couple things, and then I'm done talking about this. I'm sorry, but Crown Prince could only gain you 1 anger, because Gujita is your attacks that don't have anger in the text box. So Crown Prince was always a single anger, no matter what. And then I personally feel that the best tag Vegeta builds were the life card builds anyway. So I don't know. Like, I was never a fan of the stage beats versions in the first place. So draining their stages to me is more secondary. So I think maybe that's why we view it a little bit differently. But
probably I'm sorry, I didn't really play this deck too tough. Was the plan to just run cards without anger? Because I know Crown Prince had the infinite, so
yeah. So Crown Prince, basically the reason. Yeah, I mean, so
okay.
You would have like AK gains 2 anger on level 1, and Choke gains 2 anger on level 1, okay. And so you'd run your cards that gain anger that are really useful to you, like what is it called? Push.
Slap.
Energy push. Yeah, the one that you destroy, blue slap, and go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy. So you run that one just because you generate more actions and hit him in the face really hard. But yeah.
Fair. I
Well,
think that we fed the crown on Gogeta, right?
yeah. Well, to move on from Gogeta, the two other like decks that I think are in the popular talking points of retro have been Orange Goku, specifically adaptive, and then Knowledge Dende is usually what people pick, but we'll just put Knowledge X, right? So we'll start with the orange here with the freezing of orange adaptive. Do you think anybody's going to actually gravitate towards things like Aura and Combative Mastery, especially given that now some of the drills are locked to those masteries?
Biggie.
I think combative. I think will fill that void more than anyone. Um, Losing attraction drill is huge, especially for Goku. Um, which is, I mean, I posted on Retro a couple of times that attraction drill is the problem with Goku because it's so free. It means that you can't attack the tech that you need to attack, that he automatically tutors because you have attraction drill, and so he's just going to mill four, and you've wasted a removal card, or you need two removal cards, and that became especially frustrating with the Unity Ginyu matchup that I mentioned earlier because I'm like, okay, I need to kill driving drill, I need to kill freezing drill, but attraction drill is right here, and so I can't touch those yet. And so I had a betrayal, play the betrayal, and I'm searching for another betrayal the whole game. So I think losing attraction is huge. And so I think that's why combative is probably going to fill those shoes. I think combative 20 is actually a really strong deck right now. Combative trunks as well, kind of in that same mold. So keeping attraction drill in that mastery is huge. I do think Aura Goku is still good. I mean, how many more nerfs do we have to get for that guy? On one hand, it's like atrocious that Super Goku is printed. On the other hand, it's like, oh, well, he actually got the work done in Orange that needed to be done for a while. So, yeah. I know Wayne doesn't like that one. No.
No.
I know you don't like the banning. You don't like the every time something's good, everyone wants to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree with most of what you said. Honestly, I think that the combative is going to be the thing because the thing about Orange that's super powerful was its ability to break the game's rules of when you level you lose your drills.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if someone was going to pursue that type of strategy and that color, that style, they would gravitate to something that would allow them to keep doing that broken thing. And the only place you get that is combative because of the nerfs to conference drill and but you have to be a villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that if the orange deck does emerge, it's going to be with combative and it's going to be a villain. So it can still use the attraction drill and the conference drill and keep the momentum in the drills as they progress through their levels. So.
Nate, you're not really well. You play Energito, right? So with Energito, obviously does loud what Wayne was saying. What makes Orange really good, or at least adaptive really good, was keeping the drills in play. Do you see Energito like how does he kind of fit into this whole like emptiness of an adaptive being gone? Does he like see more play? Do you think, or does he have more merit to him? Do we see people trying to do like what Wayne and Brandon are kind of saying, or at least Wayne was saying, more villain Orange MPs?
I think Energito is still a really, really good deck. The problem is, I think Ruthless Vegeta is one of his worst matchups. And so I know this is going to sound like hindsight, but I actually talked to Kevin like right after the CRD dropped, and I told him, I was like, Ruthless Vegeta is going to be like a deck to beat. Like, it's going to be a deck to beat because I played a lot of Ruthless Vegeta. I always felt like Namekian was a fairly hard matchup. With knowledge gone, I feel like he gets even better. And then I feel like Energito really is not very good into Ruthless Vegeta because usually you kind of go lighter on blocks. You do have really good blocks, but he locks your stages down. He hits your anger constantly. It makes you more reliant on auto levelers if you play them. I didn't play auto levelers in my build that I played that I won the Dragon Prix with, so I was relying on anger. But unfortunately, I think Aura is not a very good mastery. I just think Goku just synergized so hard with it. I think Aura 18 is pretty good. But I just don't think there's going to be that many good Aura decks. I still think Aura Goku. I feel like you could just push it even more Glass Cannon, and it could be a deck that just flips yours on the first turn. But he definitely loses a lot of consistency because now there's a counter to him, which is changing his level. So that was kind of the whole play when Aura Goku first was out. Was you and I were testing for it, and we were trying to do these D level or level him type strategies. Attraction being gone is a really big hit. I think attraction being gone is a really good thing though, because the frustration I had with the decks that got hit was not that they were good. My frustration was I felt like, especially adaptive Goku, his whole thing was he mitigated the counters to his deck. Like the things that should counter him no longer countered him because he had a counter for almost every counter. And so I think that's a really good change. Attraction being gone opens him up to more board removal, and then adaptive being gone is essentially forces him to play Aura. I guess you could maybe play combative Super Coup. Problem is if you go up to 2 and then you're open to the de-leveling thing again. So I don't know. That's just kind of my overall thoughts on all of the adaptive Aura combative thing. I think combative is going to be really good. I think people will go back to it, especially if Vegeta starts becoming a big meta threat.
Yeah,
I think combative's always been good.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like people have been sleeping on combative for so long because I think
For sure.
since it was released, you had Orange Swerve and you already had Dismissal and Defense. All three of these cards were already just looping nonsense and made it so you could never get through. And then you have had subsequent things like Orange Absorption Drill. You already had Orange Hiding Drill. You have the block drills. I think the biggest one. I know everyone's focusing on traction, and maybe this is my skewed perception of things, but I actually think Orange Freezing Drill being adept only was the biggest thing for me, because you say the Glass Cannon thing. Now that Aura Goku doesn't even have that on top of having all the weaknesses, I don't think there's a reason competitively to play that deck. It has too many weaknesses to what's the meta. The meta is decks that run Unleashed. 50% of the field is Unleashed running. Instantly can counter you. Almost every aggro deck in the game, even Energy Beats, is running Dig. Instantly beats you by wiping your board. I shouldn't say instantly. Does not instantly beat you, but cripples you immensely just by doing the thing. You know what I mean? And you're not a deck that they need to worry about digging up either. So they don't have that second thought of oh, I might give you NPPV. Goku's upper levels are actually Goku's levels. If you were to take away the fact that 1 to 2 gets you 2 drills in a combat when entering and sets you up so well, if you were to just take those levels and put them without the drill searching, they're really not that bad. They're fine levels, but they're not OP. What's crazy is how fast the setup was. So there's just.
So you're saying if you take away the drill searching on Goku 1 and 2, that they're not bad levels?
I'm saying if you look at the I should rephrase this. If you were to take the stack and you were to compare it to other MPs, Goku really, his levels aren't that crazy. It's the fact that what he's getting is crazy. And
sure, yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, that's why you haven't seen him hardly in anything but Orange.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, combative Goku is a really fun deck, but Red Drill just, honestly, and this is kind of funny, I feel like Red Drill has had the problem that Orange now has, which is that you can't keep your drills very effectively, and there's not a lot of recursion for them. And so, that's why commanding Goku has been, it's on the fun deck shelf, it's cool. You get cool points when you beat somebody with it, but it's not competitive. And I do think overall Orange's card quality is a little stronger than Red Energy. So I still think Orange Goku could take an event, but it's certainly not a monster at this point in time, because now you actually have a weakness, which is pretty cool.
I don't see I could see combative making it to top 8. I don't know if combative combative Goku specifically. I don't necessarily see making a top 4, but I could definitely see combative making a top 4, especially because I think people are going to be geared towards running more aggro for a bit, unless people want to dive. I don't want to get too much into this explanation because it's going to tie into another question I want to ask you all. But I think Aura. I kind of agree that it is a little weak. Especially, I don't think it needed the nerfs it got, truthfully. But that's for many discussions past. So,
if I could leave you guys with this, I think that over the last handful of years, our perception of drills, like as far as like how long we're supposed to have them, has been, I think, off because the cards have been so good, right? Because like the way the game is supposed to be played, we're supposed to have our drills until we level and they go away. Think about setups, right? When we have setups, we use it once, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Drills are supposed to be like setups on like steroids a little bit, but you're not supposed to have them the entire game, right? And I think that our ability to keep them for as long as we have been able to keep them makes us deck build in a different way, to which we put like 20, 15 drills in your deck or whatever, and it's okay because they're going to snowball and gain you a bunch of advantage, right? But I think that now that we have all the weaknesses that Frank listed, your Unleash, your Digs and stuff, perhaps like there's a way to like build your deck with like less drills and more ways to recur them, to where we're able to keep the drills not as long as we used to, but still longer than we're supposed to, long enough to win or make a significant impact on the game.
Sounds like you are describing Orange Adept.
Orange Encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say I majorly agree with that, and I the thing is, there are a ton of cards, especially in Orange, that pull drills back into play. People just don't want to run them because that's like the big power budget for those cards. Like, people want to be able to run cards. People have gotten used to running cards that just do everything for you. Has all these effects. I mean, if you want drill recursion, it's there. There's plenty of it. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I think you made a great point. I can't commend you more. Okay, Thanks. So yeah, no, for sure, that was a very good take. I agree with that very much. So let's see here. Shoot. What the heck? What was that thing I said I was going to move on to next? The decks. Oh, yes. Okay, so we're looking at the CRD. I think we've covered the main big stuff. I don't really feel like anybody has. If anybody has anything to say about Red Distracting Shot, real quick, you're free to speak your mind for like 10 seconds. But
that card was real good.
Oh, I missed it already.
It didn't get its time in the sun, but it's probably a good thing that it didn't, because
yeah, it probably needed to hit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say I would have maybe preferred them to trim the power a little bit rather than just outright limit it to 1. But the rearrange was like a big like thing that I don't feel like people realized how good that was. I don't know. It probably needs to be limit 1, but I could also have seen like them maybe just trimming the power down a little bit and seeing how it went. But I won't complain. It need to be hit in some way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I think the right call was made because when we heard about it, we're all like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I feel like that's a card that everybody kind of lost their mind over when it was previewed too. We were all just like, oh my god, like this card has no downside. It doesn't have a cost. I mean, I dig for whatever I want, and it might be focused. Like, what is going on? This deals damage. That's how I feel about Future Gohan level 1, right? Is I'm like, oh right, it deals damage too, in addition to all this other stuff. That's how Distracting Shot was. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to explain it. Dang it. See, I keep losing my train of thought. You guys keep saying all this good stuff, and I keep writing stuff down. With that said here, okay, so we move on from the Distracting Shot. What decks do we felt like benefited the most from this CRD? So Wayne and I were on, obviously, the last discussion. We talked about how, but from my memory, now maybe I'm misconstruing this, Wayne, misremembering, but for what I remember, is you and me were both kind of like, well, we don't really see the meta changing that much, because we felt like a lot of the decks were kind of right there with them, maybe slightly under, but they were definitely viable and worth playing. People just perceived these other decks to be just monstrously ahead. So I will say this: I still kind of feel that I feel like people are going to just explore the decks that I already felt they should have been exploring. Personally, I'm curious if your mind has changed at all since we talked about this.
It has actually. I think that the fact that there's no more knowledge, and even the fact that there's no more Dende, means that like the decks that were in jail because of their existence are now free.
I agree.
And that being
100%.
like a lot of the Dragon Ball decks that like, because it's no secret that I like playing Slug. I wouldn't play Slug when Dende was around because it was too risky. Even the deck that Anthony made popular, Unity Supreme Kai, any like ball centric deck, like had a really hard time with knowledge and Dende existing. So now that it's gone, I think that those decks are able to play, and their re-entry to the meta kind of shifts the whole thing around. So it's hard to call it. It's just the only thing I can say with certainty is that the decks you couldn't play before, now you can play, and it's going to shake things up a bit. I think the same is true for the one last deck I'll talk about is the black decks. I remember, Frank, we talked about the black decks last time, and I think that knowledge being gone makes it a lot more realistic for black decks to thrive in this type of setting.
That's interesting because I feel that adaptive being gone makes the black decks better. I mean, knowledge being gone obviously is nice for a lot of stuff, but interesting. Oh, Bandit.
Why do you say adaptive? Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Why do you say
You're
adaptive?
totally good. The same weaknesses that we pointed out with Super Q were all things that black meditative decks had access to if you built them that way. But those weaknesses that Aura has that adaptive doesn't, black does not really have did not have a good way to deal with adaptive Goku specifically because it got to set up the counters way too fast for most meditative decks to be able to have a shot at all. If that makes sense. Without getting too specific.
I'm noticing that like we look at like the style of black from a totally different lens. Like whereas you look at like it more from the meditative side, I always look at it from the mischievous lens, right? And I feel like not only was having to deal with the deck that just rejuvenate all the anger, it's tough for black anyway because black doesn't have a bunch of tools to control anger outside of trick shot, right? And that's always been one of black's weaknesses, right? But also like the deck that, hey, if you let me live around long enough, all my attacks are doing like 8 life cards. Unpreventable, at least one of them, because of the intimidation or whatever. That deck is now gone. So now it's easier to survive, and it's a lot, like the anger decks are a lot slower, like outside of like the Ferraris and all that other stuff. But I think that's just super interesting, and I think it's really cool. I hope we start seeing more black decks.
I think I agree that black is a huge winner, because I don't know, like I like with Dende specifically, I was playing against black decks that were geared to remove my entire pile, and I was still MPPing because I just needed one card in the pile, and I've got the anger that I need. So I think that the meta is kind of shifting toward a slower state, and I think that really favors black in general. I don't think that I would not have felt comfortable running meditative with adaptive Goku around at all, or Dende. I think that both of those decks were really difficult, and if Dende wasn't the best deck in the format, it was close, but I think that the problem with Dende was that it warped everything, because especially the creation variants, when you have access to Ball 2 on demand, like there is Earth Ball 2 specifically, you cannot run a camp deck in that meta. Like you cannot camp a level because Dende is gonna find that Ball 2, and you're leaving that level, and then it's just, I'm just gonna coast to victory, and so I think that for that reason, like the knowledge nerf is really, really healthy. I think that it is gonna open up a lot of strategies to thrive, and then the adaptive it built so much advantage so quickly. And you could, like you're talking about mischievous, like you could hit the perfect card in their hand and they could still throw an attack for 12 life unpreventable at you, and black can't deal with that. So you just, because there goes all your best drills are in pile now, like you're just kind of up the river a little bit. So I do think black is a winner. I feel like Vegeta is feeling pretty good right now. I think that even as the MP that was designed to beat board heavy decks, like he still struggled with adaptive Goku. Because there's just answer after answer. You have mocking drill on command. You know, like, okay, cool. You just countered my cards that stop you. That's fun. And I think that knowledge specifically was a really hard matchup for Vegeta too. So I don't know. I think that Vegeta's a winner. I think that Black is a winner, and that those are kind of opposite sides of the spectrum, which to me means that it was probably a pretty solid CRD. So
to kind of agree with both of you guys on a couple of different points. You know, like I said earlier, and like Brandon just said, you know, adaptive Goku had counters to counters. Dende had some counters to things that you normally should counter him, like, you know, his ability to prevent you from capping balls and, you know, things like that. And regardless of whether you're talking about mischievous or meditative, or, you know, Black's kind of whole thing is, I want to rip out the tools of your deck that you need to win. But when the decks have cards built in to kind of like circumvent that, you know, prevent that, I feel like the style as a whole gets a lot worse. But then to kind of like spin off that, you know, with Brandon's, like, he's right, like Vegeta's a winner. He struggled with adaptive Goku, and he struggled with Dende, in my opinion. And then you've got, you know, Black style getting better, and they're both at different ends of the spectrum. But really, you know, I feel like in a healthy meta, decks will rise up, and then people will start playing decks that counter those decks.
Enough is enough.
Huh?
People will say enough is enough.
Right. I just didn't feel like necessarily there was that big of a spectrum with adaptive and knowledge Dende existing, and I think that creates, kind of like Wayne said earlier, there was decks that were held down by those decks, and so maybe now people will start having more options to counter whatever becomes the new, you know, big threats. And then, you know, then the meta will evolve from there. So like those decks will appear to counter the current cream of the crop, and then people will start playing other rogue decks to counter those decks. Yeah, because it all comes down to, what do you think people are going to play? And I just felt like the most current thing was kind of a little bit a step above, or maybe they're just not so, like, you know, maybe you can counter adaptive or counter knowledge with this deck, but there's a whole bunch of decks that, like you said, slug. Like, you know, how do you play slug when you're, you know, worried you might run into Dende, you know? So I think it opens up a lot more, especially like some tier 2 decks that could threaten. And then I also think that just in general, people will consider some more options. I think right here at the beginning, the CRD just hit. People are going to gravitate towards things that they played before because they didn't have a lot of time to adjust. I think as time goes on, we're going to see a bigger variety in stuff.
How y'all feel about Ascension in this meta?
I think that a lot of the space that knowledge took up, Ascension will, you know, slot right into a lot of, you know, its placement as far as the meta goes. I think that actually that's it. That's all I got. I was about to go on this long tangent, stop myself. Frank, you say something. What do you think about Ascension?
I know I'm the tangent man here. Actually, I think people's perception of Ascension is inflated. I think people think too highly of that mastery. It absolutely steals games, but if you are properly teched in your deck, like, you can slow it down enough. The only variants of Ascension that I think will sneak dubs are going to be those really board heavy, tricky ones that get really lucky and they sack you with balls. Or they sack you with, I dropped 6 board cards that all raise my anger, and this is an armada of cards that you have to have such specific tech to beat. That's just the game state. I think the game got slowed down. Like the game is still as can be still as fast, but the decks that were hit were the most consistent at being fast, if that makes sense. So like you still have like decks that can turn 1 aggro with dig and just pop you with like 5-6 attacks. That still happens. It's just the ones that like take Vegeta and stuff were just doing it the most consistent. So like there's a lot more variance, so these decks will actually have the room to breathe. It's the same thing with the meditative and other things.
I think that the decks that are fast, that were fast, the Gujitas and the adaptive Gokus and stuff, life card damage. Bad because they could flip your deck over. The decks that are fast now, or that can be fast, obviously we just saw like a whole slosh of Vegeta decks, right? Stage damage, a lot more fair. They have to fight through your stages, and we have blocks now that can circumvent the damage that, they have to fight through. So I believe that's a more healthy way as far as the meta goes of being the fast deck. But again, I think people just played Vegeta because it's easy. We saw this again at the start of, I think, either last season or when Super first came out, Vegeta was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually that quickly changed. Like there's still a ton of them as far as like its representation, but as far as its success, people said enough is enough, and he wouldn't make it all the way. So I think it's good, man. I think mid range might be back, and I cannot be happier about it.
I agree. I think mid range is yeah.
I also have a problem with you saying Ascension. Your Ascension comments, Frank. I'm a big fan of Ascension Krillin. And I think that little bald man is very scary now that those aggro decks are gone.
I feel the same way with Trunks also specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trunks and Krillin and and Kelly, went undefeated in Swiss with Roshi. So I think even with Wallbreaker, I think Ascension decks can slot 2 Feast and run Mule Kick, and I think they're still looking good. I think Ginyu is going to be a huge threat. Just because he's another deck that can turn you over really quickly. Big damage, really fast. I don't know. I think but he's a lot more interactable than Goku's impenetrable drill state.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Krillin. I think Krillin and Ginyu are kind of the I guess like the sleeping giants people haven't been playing a ton of lately. We've seen them here and there, but in general, Ginyu's, you remove his allies, he gets a lot weaker. Krillin, you play unpreventable damage, he gets a lot weaker. But I still think they're very threatening. I personally also think Ascension is really threatening. I think Red in general is very threatening. They've gotten a lot of really good support in the past couple of sets, a lot of really good MPs that synergize with them, and Distracting Shot got hit, but overall across the board, Red has almost remained untouched as far as nerfs for a long time. They have a lot of no, I agree. I'm just saying I think Red is in a really prime spot right now, not in necessarily any one particular archetype either. I just think Red is pretty powerful, especially Ruthless and Ascension. I know Frank feels differently about Ascension, but
I don't think Ascension's bad. Okay, I just think everybody immediately being like, "Oh, Ascension's so like." Hold up a sec, but I can explain myself further on it, but.
Oh, you don't have
to. Please do.
I would like to hear your explanation.
Right.
Okay.
Especially Protective. You don't have to worry about running into Protective anymore. Yeah. Like, Protective isn't threatening, but, like, you always wonder if you would just catch a stray Protective deck and it'd really be tough, but not anymore.
I have so much. I have a bunch of different things I can say based on what everyone said. I don't want to take up too much time because you guys are more interesting to me. My quick comments, I don't think Ascension's bad. I think Ascension is better than Ramp, for example, and always has been. So like when people choose to do Rampaging over Ascension, I'm always astounded. But the decks that exist in Ramp, they don't work the same. They could not exist in Ascension, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. I definitely think Ascension's worth playing. I don't think Protective stopped Ascension decks. The Protective decks that stopped Ascension decks would lose to the rest of the field. Like, they could shut down Ascension and PPV, sure, but they are going to lose to everything else, so they're not viable picks. It's the same reason why you don't see people play, like, Tag Roshi, like, ever at an event. Yeah, in theory, it beats a lot of decks, but, like, what do you do against the decks that don't need Roshi played against them? That's where you'd have to experiment and stuff. Ruthless is always going to be good. Always will be good. It's a matter of how do you shore up the fact that you have to hit people to lower their anger. And then I think you're set. because hitting people to lower their anger is really great against decks like Energito, like you said earlier, that are meant to kind of go blow for blow. The blow for blow decks will always lose to Ruthless, but the decks that are like dedicated MPPV will play around it. They know how to play around it. The reason why I say Ascension is overinflated is because Ascension kills itself. Ascension has a time clock. You have Knowledge that has better anger combos that is now gone, that was also keeping itself alive and also had ball backup in every deck like so freely, and it just like always just started so great. So I think there's a lot more weaknesses to Ascension that Knowledge ever had, and that's why I think Ascension is like in a fine state, and I think it's in a very balanced state. I topped an event with Ascension Goten where my whole deck was just to go fast, 100% sellout to anger. It's always going to be able to take people by storm if they don't properly tech the deck. And as all of you said, Red has the most answers ever to wall breakers, same with everybody else. All sorts of cards. So if people start pulling out the tech that was being slotted in for Knowledge, absolutely an Ascension deck can win an event easy. Because if they start removing things like Energized Strike, which just absolutely cripple Ascension, like the board anger and stuff that I was talking about, the mastery anger. Even Wallbreaker, I still stand by Wallbreaker. It's still worth playing. So there's
for sure.
I just think like I don't mean to say it's bad. I mean to say that like I think like saying it's like the new king is a bit much, because there's been ways to beat Ascension forever and they still exist. It's just, are you going to, like, for me personally, I never build a deck unless I think it can beat MPPV decks, like Ascension decks. I won't bring it to a tournament if I don't think it can beat it. And that's a personal thing. And I always like to splash like 1 or 2 Tug of War because Ginyu exists. So like I like to have my bases covered as a builder. So this is like purely coming from like my perception, obviously. So I don't think anybody's necessarily wrong. That's just how I see it. Like I don't fear Ascension decks because I know I can build around them. And not like not have my deck suffer at other things.
That's my boy.
So
how about Empowered? You know, I feel like Empowered escaped completely unscathed, and it is extremely powerful with both Piccolo and Gohan.
That's the king, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
I know you think it's the best deck in the game, so Wayne, that's why I,
What do you think is the best deck in the game is?
What do I think is the best deck in the game?
Yeah.
Man. I have no idea. I'll be honest and say I really don't know, but I'm kind of an ADHD player anyway. I jump from deck to deck to strategy all the time, so there's nothing that I really settle into. I think Unity Ginyu probably is right up there with Empowered Piccolo.
Fair.
I think Ascension Trunks is right there with Empowered Piccolo. I think if I were to pick 3 top decks right now, I think those would be my top 3. So,
All right, Nate, what do you got? You guys think that there's one deck that's head and shoulders above everyone else?
Nate.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to go first.
No.
I would say at this point in time, I don't think there's a clear top deck. If I had to say 3 that I would predict are going to be like top decks, I think Ruthless Vegeta, Empowered, either Piccolo or Gohan. I think they both are very good and have different merits. And then probably third, I would say, man, it could be almost any one of Blue, Red, or Orange Ginyu, honestly. I know a lot of people don't like to play Orange, but I think Orange Ginyu is really good. In a couple of different masteries, actually. So I think it's underexplored. I think Orange Ginyu is really underexplored right now.
You got to do what Wayne's talking about and prioritize your drills.
Yep.
I think that's the Ginyu thing.
Well, Ginyu can gain so much anger in Orange. Like you can run, and he can run mixed beats so easily. Like you can run beatdown. Like you can even run conference drill if you're playing. I guess you can run in any deck, right? It's not restricted to a mastery. It's just villains only.
Right.
So like he can still run conference. He can play beatdown. I mean, beatdown is probably going to come in for, if you got Birder out and you got Goldo out, it's going to be 9 stages. Like, even energetic Ginyu sounds pretty good. Like You do run the risk of them banishing your allies and then your deck getting a lot weaker. But I don't know, man. It's still really threatening.
I mean,
Yeah.
energetic getting Goldo and a drill turn 1 is it's pretty good. That
Yeah,
sounds pretty,
I mean,
pretty solid.
it's anecdotal, but I played. I can't remember if it was Kevin. I might have played Kevin with energetic Ginyu a couple weeks ago, and like he did end up banishing like every ally except for Raccoon, and like I still MPPV'd. So it's, I mean, there's a lot of anger. You know, there's a lot of anger to be had.
So I'm sorry, the decks that you said Ruthless Vegeta and you said Orange
I said
Ginyu?
Ruthless Vegito, Empowered, either Piccolo or Gohan. Pick your flavor. They, like I said, I think they both have different strengths and weaknesses. I think Piccolo's a little maybe more consistent, but he also can get walled hard by non-styled hate. Gohan doesn't have that much of that problem. And then I'd say like pretty much any flavor of Ginyu, I think, has a chance to be top tier.
Well, I think the benefit with Gohan is to the rescue, and you can fix the Vegeta problem with Yajirobe pretty easily, and then you know, you have a fun time.
Yeah. I think that if I were to pick 3, obviously I've already sung the praises of Piccolo. I think that Majin Vegeta is probably a deck that has been doing well for me, and I think it do well in this meta just because Prideful, you get extra value. You get the full juice out of Prideful, and he has Final Flash, bro. Like, like having access to those 2 cards, and you also have restriction if you're in red. Like, your opponent can't do anything but fight. That's a huge advantage in the meta we just came from. Again, it's reforming now, so I don't know what it's gonna do. But if it looks anything like the last one, I think that Vegeta, some flavor of Vegeta, is probably in that tier. And the third one, geez, man. Probably I have to see more Ginyu. Honestly, I haven't seen enough Ginyu, but the deck that Derek ran a while ago, the Gohan deck, one that like Leaping kicked his way to level 3 and just beat the shit out you.
What's that? Are you talking about like Empowered?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Well, actually, you've been running it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I went South Guy with that one last year.
Yeah, I don't think enough people are playing that deck. I think that deck is consistent and it hits like a truck, and I think it's one of the last decks available to us after the CRD that can do it with that level of consistency. So I think that people might gravitate to that if they, start aligning the dots. So
and it has a really cool player created card.
Was that the Ally Beats one, right?
Yeah, that was with To the Rescue and then Awakening 2, and then Mystic 3.
Yeah.
And so you just, you toolbox whatever you need for the matchup. You've got Bulma, you've got Yajirobe, you've got Chi-Chi and Piccolo, and then you go to 2, get Leaping Kick, go to 3, and your whole discard pile is whatever you need it to be. So
I might be wrong, but I think that the deck that I'm referring to doesn't run the Mystic 3. I think it runs the Super 3.
Derek ran Super 3 for a while. Like, we were back and forth on it.
Yeah, like they're different flavors and they're both good. But I think that it just... Yeah, go ahead, Frank. I think we're about to say the same thing.
Yeah, go.
So I just think there's different ways to do it. I think they're both effective, but like, again, like I guess if I had to put one above the other, 1A, 1B, I like the Super one just because like the attack is always there, whereas like the Fusion one is kind of like handcuffed by your discard pile. Not to say like there's a lot of ways to mess with it, but there are ways to mess with it. So like I said, again, they're both good, but like I believe it's like 8 cards or something on that Super Gohan level 3.
Yeah, he gets a lot of damage really quickly. It's kind of silly.
It's huge damage, and you're always gonna have
+2, I think, on level 3.
Yeah, he has a +2.
Yeah, plus the mastery.
And then you get the +1. Yeah.
It's big.
A lot to deal with every turn.
Yeah.
So.
And it's really hard to lock him out of too because he has the free attack plus allies to help pay, and then you've got stage gain on skillful parry.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really hard to keep him from just unloading.
Right. Vegeta's gonna have a really hard time with a deck like that, you know, which he wouldn't expect to because I think it's an energy deck by like technically, but like again, it's got all the allies to soak up the damage and he's gonna be jumping all the time with his leaping kicks. Like a well-timed leaping kick is just like plus 10 stages essentially. So like, yeah, man, I'm excited, dude. I think that the last time I was on here, I said that the meta was healthy, and now I think it's even healthier.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely better. I think it's definitely better. I definitely think it's better. I truthfully
I
think.
also don't think we've seen the last of Dende. That's the last thing I got. Sorry, Frank.
Oh no, you're good. I realized that the thing I kept forgetting about to bring up was Dende the whole time, and like we would start talking, and you guys get on these points. But anyway, I was going to ask you. I know I'm kind of deflecting. I'm dodging the question a little bit, but I do want to just say a couple things. Will Dende see play still? Because everybody says Distress is so broken. So who's going to break Distress?
Yeah,
Like-
are you asking how we would play Dende?
Is anybody even going to keep playing him? Because apparently Distress.
Yes.
A lot of people had
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
issue with Distress. So like, what is that? What does a non-knowledge Dende look like that is like focused fully in on the balls probably, or it's doing unleash stuff?
Yeah, I think you try to get to 4. I think you wanna stay in that 3 and 4 range. Maybe you run leaping kick. You can run creation and leaping kick with Namek balls, and then you can get your Namek balls out of Banish Zone.
Mm.
I'd run 1 creation just to do that. I think that'd be cool.
I don't. I think that getting to 4 strategy is an option, but as someone who's been abusing the Earth balls for like the last handful of years, I think that what I would do with the slug deck can be done in a Dende deck in a different way. The main difference, obviously, is that you don't have Hunt, but the pro to that is that you're able to NPPV. But I think that the thing that people won't see coming is the fact that you have access to those big Earth Dragon Ball attacks that people never play. I think that Dende has a really unique effect that everyone overlooks, and it's every time a Dragon Ball comes in on those first 2 levels, you gain 2 stages. So if you're Dende and you're consistently shuffling your balls away, you can keep gaining stages. So it's really hard to stage lock them. And a lot of the cards that like do tricksy stuff with the Earth balls, like Wallop and Surge and all those other things, like you're able to put balls on your opponent's side of the board and steal them for value while gaining stages. I think that there's going to be an aggressive Dende that ends up like emerging. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to be super powered because of its ability to play with the balls, like kind of like Slug does, but like it's going to have. I'm not going to say it's going to be triple Vic, but I think that it's going to. When you sit down against it, it's going to win in a way that you don't expect. A lot of the times.
And I guess with Radiant, we don't really talk about the anger gain from every ball coming in either. And so with Dende shuffling those back, and then, I mean, you can stay under that 3-ball threshold pretty easily. And then keep searching with Radiant and continue to slime your way up there.
Yeah. Stick 3 Inheritance in your deck. Give in ball 3, gain another one. Steal it. You gained, what, 3 or 4 anger from that one ball, that one interaction? Plus you drawn like 6 cards.
I don't know. That seems pretty good.
I don't know. Again, I think it's gonna be one of the harder decks to build because it's gonna be a lot of trial and error. But I think that if you put the time in, I think it's gonna bear some kind of interesting fruit.
I feel that's sort of how Dende's designed anyway, though. You know, even in knowledge, like he took back channels to kind of get to his goals, and I think that. I mean, I had the experience of sitting down across from people who really did not understand how I was going to win the game a couple of times. And so they would be surprised when it's like, oh, you just shot up 2 levels in a combat. Like, didn't see that coming, you know? So, I don't know. I do think that Dende is just a sneaky MP. And I'm sure there's definitely stuff out there for him.
The master, Frank.
I definitely have some interesting opinions about him, but I do think he's. I don't know if people will take the time to develop him, but there's something there. I've we have him in our GT format, and he's one of the best decks in the format, arguably. With our granted, there's a bunch of other things going. I'll just say this: I think there are a lot of pieces in place. I'm curious to see if Namekian, maybe not this set, but if Namekian gets any drill-based MPs that aren't Kami, and even Kami, I think Kami has a lot of potential purely because the drills in Namekian are really crazy, and I think Dende can play them too. And I'm curious to see somebody do something like that, personally, more than I am some deck that's trying to gimmick up to 3-4. I think the drill decks will be better, personally. But, I mean, that could be a really just cringe take that's going to be completely wrong in a few months from now. So I don't know. I just have some different experience that isn't entirely relevant to dedicated fantasy. So I think he'll be played. I think he's playable. I think he's still playable.
Well, admittedly, I haven't played as Dende very, very little. I did play a lot of games against him over the past weekend before the CRD came out. Anyways, I would be curious if anybody but would want to explore Ascension Dende. He's one of the few ball MPs that wouldn't care if his balls get banished. Because when he gets to 4, he can start playing them, or if he gets creation live. It also gives him a lot of combat ending potential. You can play red retreats, blindings, distress. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be great. I don't know. I have no idea how good it would be. But I kind of had this conversation with Frank recently when we were talking about something we were working on, and it's like people like to gravitate towards the low hanging fruit, like the easiest thing or the thing that works the best. People tend to gravitate towards that, and so I always think when things like these sweeping changes come out, is like, is anybody going to be willing to innovate and try something that's new? There was not really any reason to play anything other than Knowledge Dende, because it was just the easiest. Like, it had, you didn't have to put in as much thought or effort or design as trying to make him work somewhere else. So now I'm wondering, is it worth to maybe consider him outside of Namekian? And I mean, I guess I would go to Red, as the next, most viable thing, because Red has more ball support, with Panic and Bribe and, crits. And kind of like what Wayne was saying, I know he was talking about it from an energy beats perspective, but that gives him a lot of stage gain with Ascension Mastery too, between the Mastery's effects and his effects on his MP, and also just playing Dragon Balls is really, really strong. So that's just my thoughts. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert. I've probably played one game of Dende in my entire life.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to develop there. I think so. I think that's definitely stuff, but
it's a good point about the stage game, though.
Yeah,
It is.
I think stage gain is really. I'll say this. I think pile hate is always undervalued and underappreciated and underplayed. So anybody that can successfully, very easily access it, or even just splashing a couple cards a game that have pile hate, is massive. And I've been playing Enhanced again lately, and damn did I miss Sludge Bomb's interaction. So just in Dev Blows. So that's more stuff. I think there's just a lot of. I'll say this though, to jump to the actual question that we were talking about before we got on the sidetrack of Dende, because I did want to touch Dende. I think as long as you can predict what you're playing against, Ruthless Vegeta is the best deck in the game. Otherwise, if you don't know what you're going to play into, or if the field's very broad, I think it's wide open. I think it's entirely 50% luck and then 50% player skill. And I think as long as you build to what you think is at least predictable, you can kind of take quite a few things.
Ruthless Vegeta, huh?
I really think
You
so.
guys
I think
Vegeta-
I'm gonna throw it. I'm gonna throw it out there. I agree 100% with Frank on that. I think Ruthless Vegeta can tech for anything.
Yeah.
I just don't. He can't fit it all into one deck, but I think he can tech for anything.
yeah, you could build him where you completely misjudge what you're gonna play into and you flop hard, and then you can play it like he can be played so many ways. If you know when you can play greedy, where you just play all those really good aggro cards like Shattering Leap and I don't know another aggro card off the top of my head that is like a Shattering Leap where it's super risky to play because it costs you stages. It's got a hit, but like great example like Joey like used that card to great effect. Well, that's a card that a lot of people won't even consider playing in Ruthless Vegeta because he can't tutor with his levels, and it costs stages. You know, but like if you can get that off, like cool. Like or you can run all these like really techy 1 to 2 of cards, and you have the ability to tutor them all. You know what I mean? Like you have the ability to go up and get them so easily in a style that enables you to get to your 3 pretty much every game, if not 4. So you're rewarded for good deck building, I think, the most with Vegeta, just because he tutors so much. And Red has the most cards that have anger on the text that he can tutor that are able to deal with things. The only things he suffers against, I feel like, is anger for the most part. Like anger and, again, how you build the deck. Like anger you can tech for, though, by throwing things like Dev Blow, Shoulder Slam into your deck, Wall Breaker, that you can all tutor.
Celestial Strike is really underrated.
Yeah, he does get access to, well, you don't get it till 4, but
No, it still gets anger. The anger lower is still on the card.
if you're on, yeah, only if you're on 4, though.
Are you sure?
He doesn't have,
I'm pretty sure it's the destroy effect, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's the anger lower.
No, you get the anger lower.
Oh yeah, you're right. I've got it backwards. Yeah.
So
my
again,
bad.
like there are things I think if you, that's why I feel that way. That doesn't necessarily, like, again, it's like very much like how do you build it. But that's what I personally feel. I think there are other really strong decks that their builds are like pretty much very solidified, and I'll say like an Empower deck. I don't really see an Empower deck's build being too crazy different from each other. I feel like you're running a very similar suite of attacks. Yeah, if you do Gohan, you're going to have allies or not, sure. But like if you're not doing an ally package, so your main core is very similar, I feel like. For example, a lot of other decks I feel like go that way, and that's kind of why I just like the verse. I personally just value utility above everything else. So
Well, let me ask you this.
You said that you're able to pretty much just pick whatever you want because everything has anger on it. In your opinion, how easy do you think it is for a Ruthless Vegeta deck to get to that level? I guess we're talking about 3, right? 3 is the target that, gives you that effect. So in your opinion, how easy is it for that deck to consistently get to level 3?
Combat 2. I'd say Combat 2. You have access to things like Red Escape, for example, which dumpsters, I shouldn't say dumpsters, but has a great effect. Red Gambit, Unleashed, All Dig Your Grave. He's one of the best.
Vegeta's Fury.
Vegeta's Fury. He's one of the best, he's one of the best MPs, I think, to do a dig trade with people with because of his versatility and being able to tutor whatever you want to. Like, he runs all these cards that are really good. He's got Final Flash and Prideful Challenge, which are the 2 best anti-control cards in the whole game. Like,
sure.
He's immediately starts the ground with all the tools in the toolbox, but you don't have the room for all of them, so you have to pick. But the beauty of him is if those cards aren't BAU and people aren't playing any sort of deck removal, black, or pile hate, also black, you're going to get away with a lot of stuff until people have those cards and answers to you. So that's why I feel that way, at least. But
see, and I do think he struggles with black. And
I do too, actually. Well, to an extent.
I think he's got a really bad Gohan matchup, honestly.
Like Ally Gohan,
why?
or
I think Ally Gohan generally beats Vegeta. Mostly because I don't know. Like I think Gohan's very free in what he gets, and Vegeta has to wait and see Prideful. And until he gets to 3 and 4, he can't tutor Final Flash.
It depends, though.
Which I guess Final Flash doesn't really hurt Gohan anyway.
Yeah.
It depends, because that's where you're kind of saying you could build. If you expect Gohan, you run 3 Celestial Strike, 3 Energy Blast, and then you have Prideful Challenge as an answer. You have Energy Blast. You have Celestial Strike. If you're running Red Inferno, you've got crits on demand. I mean, I'm not saying it's like I'm not saying he auto wins it or anything.
Right.
I think he can be built in a way that pretty much he has a counter to most things.
I am not disagreeing that Ruthless Vegeta is a ridiculously good deck. I mean, obviously it is. Like it's a top tier deck. If we're talking about top tier decks, I just think that I don't know. I guess I don't have as much faith in his ability to tech for as many things as you guys do.
What if he starts running red jump kick?
Ugh, red jump kick.
Well, yeah,
that's solid.
I
That's
think
a solid card.
again, I think it depends on what you build. Like I said, if you can predict what you're going, if you have a good read on what you're going into, but
I think this is a really good example of how much like looking at the same thing from different perspectives can like flip flop the opinion and perspective of the way things are. Because like when people say Ruthless Vegeta to me, I just think the deck that runs all the physical attacks and eventually tries to it'll slime anger on you as well. Whereas Frank, it seems to be, is looking at it from the hey, just get to level 3 and then just toolbox them to death. I would have never thought to do that, especially in Ruthless, right? Because you're gonna run a lot of cards that are like not counterproductive, but like not cohesive with the beat them down with stage of strategy that the mastery kind of like points you in the direction of. But like you said, it has a lot of tools that'll just jump you to that next level. But then my brain starts thinking, well, okay, if I'm able to use those tools to jump to that level that I want to be at, and I'm able to do it quickly, I don't have much of a discard pile or much of a toolbox to work with. So I would think that would be some of the things I would have to test and figure out. Like, okay, if I'm able to reach those levels quickly in the game, what am I really having to work with? Am I gonna have to take a lot of damage? Like, you gotta start asking yourself those types of questions. So I think that it's a hot take, Frank. I really do. But I'm not gonna say you're wrong.
no, that's totally. I think that's totally fair. I think with that, you think he's touched on a lot of points. There are ways to play decks. Great example is a good Namekian player knows when to take damage and have 40 cards in their discard pile that they make disappear in 2 turns. So.
Well, last thing I'll say is, you've also got to consider though, like, he can just draw a lot of these cards, and then if he draws them and he's able to get 3, he just gets to play them twice because a lot of them aren't banished after use. Like especially like if you're running Lightning Cutter to deal with meditative, like you could just spam Lightning Cutter, like because it's not banished after use, I don't think. So like
You're right.
you just spam Lightning Cutter over and over and over, and like how do they deal with that? Especially
They block it.
Yeah, but are you going to be holding energy blocks against Ruthless Vegeta?
I mean, case in point, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, if you there's all sorts of factors, that go into the gameplay and decision making and deck building, and I think even with all this said, like I don't think Vegeta is gonna win every event. I don't think Vegeta. I think Vegeta is a top cut MP. I don't think he's. I know, but hear me out here. I think he's a top cut MP, but I don't expect him to win an event. I see him in a top cut, but like depending on what the top cut is, like really depends. And then like I said, really build dependent. Like not every build, there's no one build that fits all for him. So that's like
history would agree with you, right?
I mean, I lost to. I mean, for what it is, like I lost to Paul that runs such a goofy build that is so different than anyone else's, and then you go compare it to like the builds that you're saying, like.
Let's go back. What did you say about Ruthless Vegeta again? Like specifically, what is your take?
I think it's the best deck in the game if you can predict what you're going to play into. So it really depends on the. It's just that if you have a good prediction of what you're going to play into, I think it'll win. But I'd have to see the build, and like if I was like spectating as an outsider, I'd have to know the build. Like if I saw your build going into Top Cut, I'm like, yeah, as long as you play it right, you got it. Or I would look at your build and I go, no, you don't got it.
Well, so Joey ran Dr. Brief's ally in his Ruthless Vegeta.
Did he really?
That he just won.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I ran Bulma ally in mine a lot of times when I expected heavy aggro, just because it helps you out. It's stage soak, it's a card draw.
Why not? I mean, it
doesn't hurt you, really. He has so many options. Like,
yeah, He does. I think we're in a state where I don't know, like all things equal, I think there are a lot of MPs that are probably going to make top cut if you see him. You know, like you're going to see a Vegeta, you're going to see a Ginyu, you're going to see a Gohan, Piccolo. Like you expect those things to make top cut when you see him. So I don't know. I think it's healthy.
I feel like I want to say what Frank said about Vegeta, about Piccolo, but like my explanation is like the weakness of Piccolo is like we mentioned